everyone, and welcome to another episode of Friday PM. I can't do the woos this time because the rest of the team aren't with me, but I know you're with me in spirit. Today, we've got a great lady with us. She is a woman of God. She loves the Lord, but she's got an incredible testimony. Revelation says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And we know that there's an adversary who wants to keep us silent, who wants to keep us just mute and not talk about particular issues that affect us in our lives. So Mary is many things. And hi, Mary.
Hi.
You are a trained nurse.
Yes, I am, yes.
You're a mother, a grandmother, many things that I probably don't know. I think you're a bit of a foodie.
Very much so, yeah.
Which is good. We're all foodies in this house. But Mary is also a survivor of domestic abuse. We wanted to say all the other things before because this is not her label. This is just something that she's been through, something that she's experienced, and something that she's able now to talk about. So Mary, it's been so great meeting you. We met you at a couple of meetings recently, but you've known of Vinesong for a long time. And when we met with you and we visited with you, we had no idea of the testimony that you had and that you wanted to share with us. And God has really built you up and allowed you to be able to speak now on the issues that you went through with domestic abuse. And I think you had a statement that you wanted to say at the beginning of the program, and I think you just go ahead and make that statement, and we'll go ahead and we'll speak about your life.
Well, the message I wanted to say really was that whatever we go through in life, God is with us. He's there in good times and bad, and he will get us through. Sometimes we feel that he's not there, but he is there with us. And when we come out the other side, we can see how he has helped us through. And he's done that many times in my life. Yeah. So,
praise God. You talked about in your childhood, and I think we'll just start there. We'll just be brief on this, but you talked about your home, what your home life was like when you were growing up. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was one of three children, and I assumed my childhood was normal. I didn't know any difference, but it was, in hindsight, it was very abusive. My mother was quite physically abusive to my dad and probably physically to us as well, thinking about it, but very much there was a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of neglect. And I just took it as normal when there was screaming, shouting, hitting going on a daily basis. I just assumed that everybody's home life was like that. I wasn't allowed to bring any friends home, and I wasn't allowed to go to anyone's houses when I was at primary school. So I didn't know any different. That was just what normal life was like to me. It was only when I went to secondary school and I was actually allowed to go and visit friends' houses that I then realised how different their families were, the interactions. Instead of constant tears, there was a lot of laughter. Around the meal table, we always had bickering and arguing and shouting, and they had lots of laughter and chatter, and it was so striking how different it was. And there was a lot of gentleness, a lot of loving, rather than all the anger and all the shouting all the time. And I just slowly realised that my family was dysfunctional, that it wasn't a normal family. So for many years I thought it was, but
Yeah. But that's the only example that you had.
Yeah.
And that's all you knew.
That's right.
And like you said, it's only when you were able to see something different and see people acting in a different way that you realised that something wasn't quite right. So what did you? I mean, what did you do about that? What did you resolve when as you were growing up? What did you say to yourself about, when you get older, what you were going to do and how you were going to live your life?
Well, as I was growing up, in my childhood, I was always told that it was my fault. If something was wrong, it was my fault. I'd done something or said something wrong. And so when I went to secondary school, I'd always wanted to be a nurse from when I was 3. And that was dismissed in my family as a pipe dream. And so when I went to secondary school, I decided that I was going to knuckle down and work really hard, because I thought, to get out of this family, I need to, work hard and go into nurse training and sort of go into nurse, because in those days there used to be nurses' homes when you did your training. So to get out of the family, I felt that was my ticket out to freedom. So I sort of knuckled down and got on with work and just thought, there will be an end day to this.
And so you achieved your dream, you achieved your goal, despite what was being said in your home. Yeah. Somehow you had some resilience built into you that allowed you to follow through on your dream, and you actually achieved it, left the home. At what age was that?
18.
And then you went into to do nursing, to do what you dreamed of doing.
I did. I went in to do, it was a 3-year nursing course at that time. And in those days it was practical. There wasn't the university degree that you needed. It was very much practical and classroom sort of based, but more on the wards.
Yeah.
You went straight on the wards then. And I was glad to have, left when I did get into nursing home. I thought, nurses' home, I thought, this is it, I'm free. And a few months later, I met my husband, and he was very, very attentive to me, very saying all the right things, seemed to be really caring. I was a bit concerned that he wanted to see me every single day. As soon as we got together, he wanted to see me every single day, even after a long 12-hour shift. He wanted to see me, speak to me. And I was a bit unnerved by it, but because I'd never had any positive attention from anybody, I took it as this is what love is, because it wasn't negative, it was all positive. He wanted to be with me all the time. He just wanted me to be with him, not with my friends. And he told me it was because he loved me. And I believed that. I thought, it was positive, more positive than home had been. So I took it that he was my knight in shining armour, and he was going to take me away from what I had for 18 years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in the nurses' home, did you develop some good relationships with the nurses? Because you're living together and you're working together. So despite wanting to be seen all the time by your then boyfriend, were you still able to strike up reasonable relationships with the people around you, with your cohort? Yes,
I could. Because it had been ingrained in me in my early years that I wasn't good enough, that my opinion didn't matter or it was wrong, I was very, very, very shy. So I would go out with a group of friends, but I would always be sort of sitting on the edge, not feeling quite good enough to be in there, sort of giving my opinions or, telling them what I thought. So I was always sort of trailing along behind people, not feeling quite right, that I fitted in, really.
Yeah.
Just sort of pretending to be out there, but inside I just didn't feel right at all. It didn't feel good.
Interesting.
I had no self-esteem, no self-confidence at all.
Yeah. and you didn't really have time to build that because you met someone who basically looked like your ticket as well, away from home, away from the abusive relationships that you had at home. And here's somebody who wants to be with you. So that must have boosted you a little bit.
Absolutely, yes. I couldn't quite believe it. I kept saying to him, do you want to go off and go with somebody else? I couldn't quite believe that he wanted to be with me all the time, and that, he was treating me really well at the beginning.
Yeah.
Nicely.
Yeah. So fast forward now, you got married in 1982. Yeah. That's the same year that the Vine Song was birthed. So you got married in 1982. And what happened? How was the relationship then? Because you said you already had you were a bit unnerved by the amount of attention, but you thought that this must be love because nobody's shown me this before. So how were things when you got married?
First couple of years, it seemed okay, but very gradually things went downhill. It was so gradual that I didn't really notice it at first. Instead of sort of valuing my opinion, my ex-husband was then criticising my opinion or telling me why I was wrong. If I said, gave an opinion, he would always say, well, it was wrong because, and he'd give a reason that sounded feasible. So I used to think, oh yes, of course, silly you, of course you're wrong. And then he did actually very, very early on, after about a year, we actually moved in together to live together. And it was totally very far away from all my family and friends. And at that point, I didn't drive. Everything was public transport. And where I was living was like one train an hour, at least an hour and a half away from family and friends. So I felt very isolated when we moved into this place. And very gradually, he just wore me down over time. When we were going out, I was criticised about what I was wearing. He'd either leave an outfit out that he wanted me to wear or, do you really want to go out in that? It's not quite right. How about something else instead? And little things like in a restaurant, if I chose a meal in a restaurant, he'd sort of say, well, do you really want that? Because there'd be something else that he'd think would be better for me on the menu. Or it's just very subtle little things, but all the time it was wearing me down. I kept thinking, what I think is not right. If I thought something, I would never say it because I think, oh no, that's bound to be wrong. And I would never say it. He had control of all the finances right from the beginning.
So your money would come in?
Yeah, the wage came into a joint account. Both wages came into a joint account, and then we had a separate personal account that we had a little bit of money put in every month that we could use for ourselves. And from the main joint account, he sort of paid all the bills. I had no idea about finances. I left home at 18. I'd never had anything to do with finances when I was at home. Went into the nurse's home, and so from there moved in with him. So I had no idea about bills and mortgages and things like that. So I just followed his lead, really. If he said we did something, we did it. And, he had all the ideas of what we do and what we don't do. And I just followed along because I thought he had more life experiences than me. He was only a couple of years older than me, but I just felt he knew so much more about life than I did. So I just followed. So
you trusted him, depended
absolutely.
on him. But slowly but surely, the kind of control was just kind of was being stepped up little by little.
It was very, very gradual, and it's just almost, I think they call it gaslighting now, where you're made to think that you're mine's not quite right. You know, you sort of put your car keys down and you come back half an hour later and the car keys aren't there, and you think, well, I did put them there. And he'd turn around and say, well, no, you didn't. You put them in the bedroom, not the kitchen. You know, don't you remember doing it? And I sort of think, no, I don't remember doing that at all. I'm sure I put them on the kitchen table, but I didn't realise at the time. I just thought, well, maybe I did put them in the bedroom. I don't know why, but maybe I did. And it's only afterwards that I've realised, you know, as sort of the problems with domestic abuse have been aired more, and sort of more people are talking about it, about all the symptoms and what perpetrators do get up to, that I've, you know, realised that was happening to me all the time.
Yeah. So it gradually moved from control. Now, I mean, I went on the UK government website, and they talked about all the different kind of levels. You know, if you might be experiencing domestic abuse, if this or that or, and it seems like from your story, you gradually you were going from that control, your opinions being put down, to the far spectrum of domestic abuse. Did that happen all at once? The physical, did that happen all at once? Was that something that started early on in the marriage, or would you say it's something that took a little bit of time, or what would you say?
It started early on, in that we had lots of arguments, and he would be physically hitting me during an argument. So I just assumed it was because of his temper that he hit me. And so therefore we got to a point where if we were going to have an argument, I just stopped and I changed tact and agreed with him, and tried to placate him, because I didn't want the argument, I didn't want the hitting. And very gradually over time, it's got to the point where he didn't have to hit me, because we would start arguing. He would give me a look, and I'd think, I've stepped over the boundary. I'm gonna have problems now if I go any further, and I'd just go off track or walk out or whatever. And it got to the point where it was just a look. So if we were around at a friend's house and something was said, and I sort of laughed, I'd always look at him to see if it was okay to laugh. And if he was laughing, then it was fine. But if he was giving me a look, I think, no, stop right now. And so he didn't need to hit me. I just knew that with this look that I needed to change tact or, you know, do something different. So the abuse then was just the threat in the background. I was on a sort of heightened alert the whole time. I never knew whether it was going to be physical. There were bouts during that time, but it was mostly the coercion and the control. It wasn't physical. It was more the emotional, the financial, sexual, all those sort of things. And it was only towards the end that the physical came back in a lot and escalated. But during the middle part, it wasn't there at all.
And during that time, because you were married for quite a long time.
Yes.
How long?
33 years.
For 33 years. So you were married for quite a long time. And during that time, did you ever kind of speak to other people, you know, just I guess to other couples you've met, or another woman, you're kind of speaking about your marriage. Did you ever speak about anything, or did you ever kind of say something and people thought that was a bit strange? Did that ever happen?
I felt very ashamed, because I always thought it was my fault, because I had said or done the wrong thing and I had made my husband angry. So therefore it was my fault, and therefore I was ashamed that I couldn't be a better wife. I just blamed myself, really. So I didn't confide in anyone really at all. I just thought I need to do this better. I need to,
Need to be a better wife. You need to be a better person.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I asked you a question about, did you ever reveal anything within your marriage? But I remember you also told me, and when we were speaking, just before you got married, there was an incident that happened. Could you tell us about that?
Yes. I was raped, and that was a really, really difficult time for me because I did know of God, but I didn't have a personal relationship with him. And I just kept asking God, why didn't he protect me during that night? Why didn't he get me away? I tried to get away but couldn't. And why didn't he help me? I was very, very angry at him. And I just felt, I'd felt worthless beforehand anyway, and that just was the crowning glory, really. I just felt really, really dirty for years and years later. I felt really, really dirty, and that I'd put myself in that situation, so I deserved it in a way. I'd very, very sort of crooked thinking about it, because I couldn't talk to anyone about it because I didn't get counselling. I didn't talk to friends at all.
So you didn't tell anybody? You never disclosed this at all? I
didn't tell anyone at all. So my thinking about it was very disturbed. I just kept thinking that I was really dirty and almost deserved it, really, in a way.
So you saw that Vinesong were in your local area. What was it that attracted you? Because, you see posters of many, many things. You got so many things going on, different local events. What was it that attracted you to that particular concert?
Well, on the poster it said that it was an a cappella group, and I liked that sort of music. So I decided that it was in my local area, so I decided that I would go along and listen to Vinesong. I'd never heard of them. And I was, at that time, I still wasn't a Christian, but I was starting to think about sort of going back to church and, sort of speaking to God in prayer, but very, very simple prayer, very tentatively, because I was still angry at him. And I went to the concert, and Peace Like a River was sung at the end, and the words just flooded over me, and I just felt a real warmth inside. And I bought the CD and went home and listened to it, and realised, because I hadn't realised before I'd gone to the concert, that it was a Christian group, and heard all these words about God's love and protection and how he's able to help you through things. And words were very powerful. And I just started going to a local Methodist church. And so I spoke to a couple of friends there, and they talked to me about having a personal relationship with God. And I had seen that these friends had something different to what I had. They had a peace, a joy about them. And when they talked to me about having a personal relationship, I thought, yes, I want some of that, really. I don't want all this anger inside me, all this bitterness. I do, want to be free of it. So I gave my life to the Lord, which was wonderful. It wasn't all bells and whistles and celebrations. I just sort of did it quietly one evening. Again, didn't tell any of my family at all about it. And I just thought that Jesus would help me to change. I still thought that I needed to change. So I thought, now I'm a Christian, I've got God's strength inside me. And Jesus will help me day to day to change, to be good, so that we can result in a happy, loving marriage. So I still felt that I needed to strive and do things.
So did you go to church on your own? Did you go as a couple? What happened then?
I was going initially just me, but then my husband decided that he would come back. At that point, we had a couple of young children, so we did go back to church as a family. I initially went for a little while by myself, but we did go as a family, and I was bowled over by the friendliness, the positivity, the loving that was in that community, and I just soaked it up because I'd had so much sort of anger, destruction, negativity in my life that I just wanted more and more of it, really. Yeah. And I was reading about God's love for me, but I knew it in my head because I was a Christian. He loved me, but I didn't feel it in my heart at all. I still thought I was a bad person and I needed to do better, and that he loves everyone else, but he doesn't quite love me yet because I'm not good enough, is what I felt.
And when did that start to change? When did that start to change? What happened to make that start to change in you, that you realise it wasn't just you? What happened? It
was over time, really. It took a long time. I had different encounters where I felt God was speaking to me personally, and with each one I thought, yes, he does love you and he does care for you as you are, broken, but he still cares for you and loves you as if you were the only person there. But it did come gradually. It wasn't an instant thing at all.
So you've given your life to the Lord now. Did anything change at home? Did anything change for you?
Regarding the abuse, it didn't change at all. I was changing in that I was beginning to believe that it wasn't just me that was wrong. It wasn't just me doing and saying the wrong things, that it was a partnership there, and therefore we were both responsible. I was just a new Christian, so I was a bit confused. I had the Bible and I would open it and I'd read the words, but they weren't really speaking to me. My mind was all muddled. I was thinking, I'm still in this horrible relationship. I'm still very, very unhappy. I'd been promised, my partner for life, and I believed that my husband was my partner for life. But it was also still so unhappy. So I used to pick up the Bible, look at it. The words used to sort of run around on the page. I used to be really muddled, and I just couldn't even pray because I'd sit there and think, well, I don't know what to say. I just want to be out of this unhappiness. So the Adoration CD from yourselves, from Vine Song, was my Bible at the time, was my prayers. I would put on the CD, and there was 6 songs. I think there's 15 on the CD, but there were 6 songs that I would go through all these songs and then repeat and go through all these songs again, just listening to the words, sometimes singing them, sometimes just sitting there in floods of tears, letting these words sort of flow over me, really. And just sometimes just crying out to God saying, why aren't you helping me? But sometimes just feeling his love so strongly for me. And there was songs like He is able, God is able. to help you through. That was uplifting, but then there'd be another one when it hurt so bad. That was the one I played most. I used to just sing. I couldn't sing that one. I used to just cry floods and floods of tears, and I used to play it over and over and over. And I would just sit there hugging the Bible because I couldn't open it and pray or read it, and just hug the Bible and listen to the CD. When we did have, when my husband was abusing me after an episode, I would either go out and grab the CD and play it in the car, driving around, or if I was still in the home, couldn't get out, I would go up to the bedroom, and I had a little sort of personal Walkman and or CD player, and I would put on the CD and just put on the headphones and just try to block out the pain and what had just happened, to try and make sense of it all.
So in the middle
it
of
helped me through.
Yeah.
It helped me through the years. It really did help me through the years, the CD.
So in the midst of your pain, God gave you the words. So you didn't have the prayer. You were a new Christian as well. So you didn't have the language, but God gave you the language through these songs. I think that's so powerful, and not just for us as Vine Song, but I think for any Christian minister, anybody who's doing any kind of ministry, that we have a responsibility to really connect with God and ensure that what we put out is from the heart of God, because it's for people's lives. Because you mentioned to us that the songs literally saved your life.
Yeah, they did. They did, absolutely. And they told me that there was hope, that he was there in my pain, that he was supporting me, he was walking through it with me. And literally I just clung to those words in the hope that, things would get better.
Yeah. What I love about what you've been saying is that God gave you the words that you needed to express yourself. You didn't know how to express your hurt and pain, and you didn't have to try and think the words up. Here were these songs that God gave you that allowed you to give him back. Well, he gave you the words and you were able to give them back to him, and he was able to start doing things in you. So you'd said that you hadn't really, or you started to come to the understanding then at that stage that something wasn't right in your marriage. You didn't realize that you were a domestic abuse victim. But you, as a nurse, you'd worked with a local agency that worked with people who'd been abused domestically, and they came in and gave a talk. And you said something happened at this one particular time. They'd been in many times before, but then something happened at this particular time which made you seek help.
Yeah, their name was Estas, and they work with people in the Surrey area of the country. And they, at the end of the talk, they said that they work with people that live in Surrey. But this particular talk that she did, she said also we work with people who work in Surrey, not just live in Surrey. And almost looked at me, and I just felt she's definitely talking straight to me. And I just felt the urge to go and speak to her afterwards. And one of the first things I said to her was, I'm not in a domestic abuse situation, but I am in a very, very unhappy marriage that I am always afraid. But it's because of his temper, not because I'm being abused. And she just sort of gave me this little sort of grin, like, I've heard this so many times before, I'm not in an abusive relationship, but... and so she offered for me to go and speak to them. So I went to their offices and I had a couple of meetings with them. And again, very gradually over time, I started to accept that I was in an abusive marriage. At first, I kept when they were saying things, or I was reading things that they'd given me to read about abusive relationships, I was thinking, oh, that's similar to mine, but, you know, I'm not getting beaten up every day. I haven't got black eyes. I haven't got broken bones. And it was only over time that I realised this coerciveness, this gaslighting was very much abuse. And I'd been worn down so much that I didn't recognise it for quite a long time. They offered me a place on their Freedom programme, which is for domestic abuse victims or survivors. And I did that programme, and it was during that programme, looking at the perpetrator's traits each week, I just thought it was screaming at me that this is my ex-husband. And at the end of it, I just thought, I was just astounded at how abusive it had been and from how early on. And yeah, I just then accepted that, yes, I had been was in an abusive relationship.
So how did the relationship end? Because you're here, you've listening to these songs, God is really just changing you and letting you pour out your pain and grief. But then you're still in this relationship. So how did that come to an end? Because God was in it every step of the way and really kind of did things for you, and decisions were made for you that you didn't necessarily have to make yourself. So what happened? What happened with the marriage? How did you get out of it?
I'd like to say that I did come to my senses and flee, but I didn't. I very much still felt that we were meant to be married for life as Christians. So my husband had an affair, and he came to me and told me that he'd had the affair and that he wanted to end the marriage because of the affair. I spent a few days crying and praying about it and decided that God had put us together, so he was big enough and strong enough that he could sort out our problems, and therefore, you know, we should stay married. But it wasn't to work out like that. My husband, the physical violence came back in at that point, very much so. And every single day I would open the front door and not know whether I was going to be met with a smile or some anger. And that went on for many, many months. So in the end, I decided that this wasn't what God would want for me. I literally was afraid for my life at times, and I just thought, no, it's gone beyond saving, really. So I agreed to the divorce, got divorced, and then went and had some intensive counselling through ESTAS, and realised, you know, how abusive my whole life had been, from toddler to then, really.
Yeah. So it's really only when you were outside of it, in a way that wasn't necessarily in a decision that you made, but it's almost like God had brought it to that point to pull you out.
Yeah. And it was only once I was out of it that I could look back and really see how abusive it was. I might have, you know, I wasn't happy in the marriage, so there were things that I kept thinking, this isn't right. But I used to blank that and think, well, you know, we are meant to be married together, so let's put that aside and let's try and move on and be positive. So, you know, there were things over time that I wasn't happy with, but I just pushed them aside.
Yeah, but thankfully you've been able to get counselling, get help. You got the help of Christian friends. In Hebrews 10 verse 24, it says, "Let us consider how we might spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. So God coming into your life, giving you those songs, but also giving you a new family, giving you people, believers who could pray for you. How important was that for you when you're going through the breakup and basically subsequently after coming out of the marriage? How important would you say that was for you?
Very, very important. I got to the point where I could actually start opening up the Bible again and praying. And with the support of my Christian friends who were aware of the problems by then, I had started to open up to just a few Christian friends who I could trust. And they helped me to sort of see that God was in the situation. He wasn't going to just wave his magic wand and whisk me out of there, which is what I'd wanted, but he was actually going to be beside me and help me through. And one of the verses I clung to was Isaiah 43, verses 1-3, where it says that Jesus is beside you, and as you go through the river, as you go through the fire, it won't overwhelm you. He will be beside you. He will get you through. And I clung to those verses, and I knew at the end of it that I would come out alive and that God would be there and would help me, whatever the future looked like, because at the time it was extremely scary because I just didn't know. You know, when I was with my husband, he was my whole life, and I couldn't see life without him at all. So I couldn't even consider it when I was with him. So it was very, very scary. So being a Christian has really, really helped me get through it. And as my Christianity, personal Christianity sort of developed and matured, I was able to see how he was with me, how he's guided me through, how he's helped me to get to the point where I am.
That's so amazing. It's so encouraging, that hope, that because there may be somebody who's watching that is going through the same thing, similar, going through some sort of hell in their life. How would you encourage them? What would you say to them? What would you have welcomed somebody saying to you when you were really in the depths of despair, when you really couldn't talk to anybody? What do you think would have encouraged you?
Something that I think is really important is that if somebody does say something about abuse, that you believe them, because I always thought nobody would believe me if I ever said anything was wrong. My husband was very high up in the church and was a sort of perfect person. Sort of outward appearance was very perfect, very polite, very intelligent, very, easygoing. Everyone loved him. And I just thought if I ever said anything to anyone, they would say, oh no, definitely not him. And when I did speak to Estas and started telling them the problems, the first thing the woman said to me was, I believe you. And I just broke down in tears and was sobbing, because I thought that was the first time that I felt I could trust somebody and somebody understood where I was coming from. Yeah. So it's a big, huge step to take to speak about it in the first place. But if you can find either an organisation or just one friend to tell, and you trust them enough and they can just sit there and listen and believe what you're saying, that's a huge, huge step. It's the first step is the hardest step to take. But once you've taken that, then, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of support out there now for victims and survivors of domestic abuse. There's more awareness around, so people are more likely to be listened to and helped now than years ago.
So we're rounding up now, but we spoke and you said something really significant. You said that the first step was to tell somebody, and for people who are being told, just to say, I believe you. But then since that, what has been a way, or how has Jesus shown you how much he loves you and demonstrated that love for you?
Well, he does every day. Yeah. He's with me every day. I feel him there every day. But there are a few incidences that really sort of stick in my mind where he's been really, really, really there, sort of thing. We divorced in 2014, and in 2015, my daughter was getting married, and it was going to be the first time I was going to see my ex-husband since we'd divorced and moved out. And he had a new partner by then, and I didn't know how I could cope with, one, seeing him again because I was still so terrified of him, and two, seeing him with somebody else after 33 years together. It was going to be difficult. So I said that I wanted to meet him a couple of weeks before the wedding with his new partner, just so I could get my head round it. And he agreed to it. And before we went to meet, we were going to meet in a restaurant, and before we met, I got a few of my Christian friends to be covering the whole meeting in prayer, because I just didn't know how I was going to react, whether I could go through with it, whether I would get there and just run away again, be in floods of tears, or what. I just didn't know how I was going to react. And so I knew that I had prayer cover. And when we went to the restaurant, we were shown to our table, and it was a table with 4 chairs. And they sat down first of all, and then I sat down, and I went automatically to put my bag on the chair next to me, which was empty. And I heard this really, really loud voice go, "Oi!" And I sort of looked at them two, at my ex-husband and partner, and I sort of looked at them thinking they had heard the same thing that I had heard, and there was blank faces. And the voice said, "Oi, that's my seat." And I just knew that was Jesus just really saying to me loudly, "That's my seat, I'm with you." He might have her. There's 2 against 1, but there's not 2 against 1, there's 2 against 2. I'm your partner now. And so I didn't. I went to put it on the seat, and I just put it down beside me. And during the conversation, I just kept looking to this chair, because I just kept thinking, he's there, he's with me, he's helping me. I didn't break down. I felt really strong. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high. I was not scared at all. And I'd even gone on the train up there, because I thought, I'm going to be so upset I'm not going to be able to drive there or back. And I just sat on that train praising God all the way home, because it was just amazing. I just really, really felt him so close.
Amazing. It's a testament, isn't it, to the love of God, that no matter where you are, no matter what you're going through, no matter what you feel about yourself, he's there and he loves you, and he will try to demonstrate it in so many ways. And all that we need to do is to allow him to do that, to give him the space to be able to express that love that he has for us. And I think we're going to wrap up now. I think this has been an amazing testimony of what God has done in your life. Through many years, it wasn't something that happened overnight. There was no magic wand waved and everything was perfect. You had to walk, but God walked with you through everything. Mary, do you think that you'd be able to pray, just to, as we wrap up, just to pray for somebody who might be in the situation that you are in, just to pray for them, that God would be with them, that they would know his comfort, that if they don't know him, that they'd come to know him, and that they would have this relationship which really transcends every other relationship and everything else that's going on, and that he will bring you through.
Dear God, I thank you for this time we've had together. I pray now, Lord, for all the people watching and listening as this is broadcast, Lord. You know who's meant to be listening. You know who's meant to be seeing this conversation that we've had. I pray now, Lord, for the people especially who are either in relationships that are abusive and aware of it, or not aware of it. Lord, you know who they are. Please, Lord, may you bring to their mind something that we've shared this evening, something that has been said that will really, really pierce their heart, Lord. You will show them in a real, tangible way that you are there for them. You know their situation. You can help them to take the next step, whatever it may be, that you will be there to give them strength, that you will give them hope. Lord, your heart just longs to love these people, to care for them, to protect them. But at times when people are going through this abusive stuff, it just feels so empty. People feel so alone. And I pray, Lord, now that you will be really close to anyone that needs to do something about their relationships. I thank you, Lord, for this opportunity to speak about the negative past I've had, to talk about the positive future, Lord. I thank you that you were with me through all that I went through. I thank you that you didn't just pull me out with a magic wand, that you did give me the strength to get through it all, that you have given me the encouragement and the hope for a future of freedom, of more closeness with you, of relying on you, not relying on man as I used to do. And I thank you, God, now from the bottom of my heart for this opportunity, for this ministry that Vinesong have, for these Friday evenings conversations that go into so many homes around the world, Lord. And I thank you and pray now that people, as they are touched, will act on what God is telling them. Thank you, Lord. Amen.
Mary, that was awesome. Thank you for sharing something that's so personal, that's been such a part of your life, but that we know that your story of hope, of how God brought you through, will really be a beacon of hope to people who may be in that situation, or maybe a confirmation for people who've never spoken about what they've been through, but realizing that elements of this were going on in their lives, and to realize, actually, I am worth something. I'm not worthless. I'm not stupid, and that God does love me, and that He really wants to turn my life around and give me that abundant life that I read about, that we read about in the Word. We just want to thank you so much for tuning in and for listening wherever you are, if you're on a podcast, to this. If you are going through a situation where you believe that these issues that we've discussed in this interview pertain to you, get help from any local domestic violence or national domestic violence helpline. There are many helplines, there are many numbers. We can put a UK number down. You do not have to suffer in silence. God is with you, God is for you, God loves you, and you are not to be treated or mistreated by anyone. And God will pull you out of your situation. So if you're watching tonight and you feel that you need to speak to somebody, talk to the Lord. Tell him how you feel. Ask him, please bring somebody to help me because I cannot do this on my own. And I know that he will turn your situation around, and you'll also have a testimony to share. Mary, do you have a final word or thought that you want to share with us before we go?
A few years ago, when I went to a Christian retreat, I again felt God was very much speaking to me. We were told to sit quietly and listen to what God was going to say to us individually. And I felt God very, very much beside me. He had his arms around me, and he turned to me and he said, I love you. And I thought, yes, I'm starting to take that on board now. But he also said, you are good enough. And that is the first time that I had really felt that I was good enough, that I had come out of this life of shame and abuse, and that God was for me. I was good enough. I was worth something. And I feel that there are people listening to this, watching this right now, that are thinking, I'm not good enough. No one will believe me. I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do about this. But as Rachel has said, do turn to the Lord. He is there. He is listening. He will help you through. He will guide you to the right person or organisation. You will be believed. You will be helped. Please make that first vital step. And God will honour your courage, your first step, and he will get you through. I'm testimony of having got through it, and it's onwards and upwards, and there is always hope with the Lord. Just turn to the Lord and he will guide you.
Amen. Thank you, Mary. You are good enough.
Absolutely.
That is what the Lord wants you to hear and to know, and I hope that can penetrate through to you. We have a song, as we usually do at the end of each episode. We have a song that we want to play for you at Mary's request. It was one of the songs that she used to listen to that just gave her hope that she was going to be able to come through this. So as we end tonight, we're going to play My God is Able. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. We're looking forward to seeing you next week on Friday PM. Bye-bye.
My God is able. He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through.
My God is
Able. He is able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through.
For he has
Heal the brokenhearted,
he has
set the captives free,
You know he
heal the sick,
and he
raise the dead, walked upon the sea.
My God is
Able, He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through.
My God is
Able, He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through.
My God is
Able, He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through.
For He has
Healed the brokenhearted,
He has
set the captives free,
You know He
healed the sick,
and He
raised the dead. He walked upon the sea.
My God is
Able, He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through.
My God is able. He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through. My God is able. He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through. For He has
Healed the brokenhearted,
He has
set the captives free,
You know He
healed the sick,
and He
raised the dead. He walked upon the sea.
My God is
Able, He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able to carry me through.
My God is
Able, He's able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able. I know my God is able.
He's able.
I know my God is able to carry me through.